Can an Admiral defeat a Yonko? How strong is an Admiral? These are the questions that I'm going to try to answer in today's video. This is OP Analysis, and let's jump right in. There are people who believe that an Admiral doesn't stand a chance against a Yonko. Some believe that anyone outside of a Yonko doesn't stand a chance against an Admiral, and I've even seen some people say that an Admiral is straight up stronger than a Yonko. All that aside, today I'm going to try to convince you that my opinion on the matter is correct. What is my opinion? Well, if you were to ask me, can an Admiral defeat a Yonko, I would say that it depends on the Admiral. How strong is an Admiral? I would say that it depends on the Admiral. The way I see it, the Admirals vary in strength comparable to the way a Yonko and their commanders vary. So, depending on what Admiral you choose, they may be able to defeat a Yonko, or they may only be able to defeat someone like Ace. This is all based off of the portrayals that the Admirals have been given throughout the story, and the interactions that they've had with other characters. Which means, spoilers, all the way up to Wano Act 3. Okay, so to begin, I should outline the logic that I'm using when it comes to fighting portrayal. When two combatants clash, they'll be considered equal/somewhat equal if their attacks cancel each other out, if both are shown capable of blocking one another's attacks with the same relative ease/difficulty, or if indicated by the dialogue. If person A's attack completely counters person B's attack, then person A is considered stronger. If person B's attack hits but does no damage, then they are considered weaker. And if person B is only able to block person A's attack but not able to deal significant damage, then they are weaker, but a fight between the two would still be medium to high difficulty. I'm not including feats that are inherent to a devil fruit, so Luffy stretching or compressing, Aokiji freezing something, Akainu melting something, Whitebeard causing an earthquake, Crocodile drying up someone, etc. will not be included in portrayals, as I feel these things are more important in looking at specific situations rather than general combat portrayal. Dialogue in the narrative, however, will be considered, and at the end, a person's portrayal will be based off the sum of all their combat portrayals. Now, starting from the end of Enies lobby and going into Wano, let's look at the portrayals of Admirals, Yonkos, Commanders, and people who seem to be of that level of strength. At the end of Enies lobby, we see a short clash between Shanks and Whitebeard that would indicate that they are equals in power. Not much else to take from this scene, so let's move on. At Sabaody, we are introduced to Admiral Kizaru, who proceeds to completely body all of the supernova, and is basically unstoppable until he is countered by one Silver's Rayleigh. During their exchange, neither is portrayed as being above the other. Kizaru even points out that Rayleigh is indeed keeping him at bay. So I think that it is fair to say that him and Kizaru are about equal in terms of strength. Moving to Marineford, I will be covering a lot of the events that showed up last video, so I'll try and speed through them a bit here. In chapter 553, we see Admirals Kizaru and Aokiji attack Whitebeard. In the case of Aokiji, Whitebeard shatters his ice spears and Aokiji himself before they even get close to him. With Kizaru, Marco, Whitebeard's first commander, comes in and blocks his attack. The two then have a quick exchange that also portrays them as being roughly equal with one another. The following chapter, Admiral Akainu sends out a magma fist to destroy the iceberg hurtling towards the island. In doing so, he sends out molten rock everywhere with one piece heading towards Whitebeard, who blocks it with his Bicento. This is the closest an attack has gotten to Whitebeard at this point, and it wasn't even aimed at him like Aokiji and Kizaru's attacks were. Whitebeard and Akainu have an exchange of words that start to give Akainu the portrayal of being somewhat above Kizaru and Aokiji in terms of being a threat to Whitebeard. Fast forward and we come to Aokiji about to strike down Luffy when Marco flies in and kicks him away. Not much to take away from this, just that Marco definitely seems comfortable with fighting an Admiral. We next see Aokiji attack Whitebeard once again, but only accomplishing to freeze Whitebeard for a moment before he breaks out and attacks Aokiji. Aokiji again goes to attack Whitebeard when he is rushed by Jozu, Whitebeard's third commander. This is the second time in the series that we see an Admiral bleed from an attack, the first one being Rayleigh cutting Kizaru's cheek, indicating that Jozu is at the very least capable of giving an Admiral trouble. Following this, we see a direct physical exchange between Whitebeard and Akainu that portrays them as being somewhat equal combatants. Skip a few pages and we find Whitebeard clutching his chest and coughing up blood. This grabs the attention of Marco and Jozu, who are both then attacked by Kizaru and Aokiji respectively. The two Admirals remark how their opponents lost their focus, indicating that they are now losing not because they are weaker than the Admirals, but because they weren't paying attention during the battle. Whitebeard is then dealt a fatal hit by Akainu. It's important to point out that the reason Akainu was able to gain the upper hand against Whitebeard like this is because he's old and a bit sick, which is hampering his ability to fight. More on this later. The next time we see an exchange between Whitebeard and an Admiral, it's Kizaru blasting a hole through an injured Whitebeard after seemingly having dodged an attack from him. Kizaru is so far the only other Admiral to damage Whitebeard. Now we're at the point in which Ace is free. We see him and Aokiji cancelling out each other's attack, a portrayal that would paint them as being somewhat equal. We then get a clash between Akainu and Ace, which outright portrays Akainu as being the stronger of the two, and overwhelmingly so. After Ace's death, Jinbei, someone who fought Ace to a draw a few years back, blocks an attack from Akainu, in which it is directly indicated that Akainu is stronger once again. Vista, Whitebeard's 5th commander, and Marco then attack Akainu, but to no avail. Marco proceeds to block an attack from Akainu, however, which, while not portraying them as equals whatsoever, it is an indication that Marco is capable of putting up a hard fight, and unlike the cases of Ace and Jinbei, Akainu isn't portrayed as being overwhelmingly stronger. Finally, we reach the point in which Whitebeard attacks Akainu with everything he has. It's important to point out that while he definitely lost this exchange, Akainu did put up a fight and was able to deal a devastating blow that took off half of Whitebeard's face. Later on, Shanks enters the scene and we see him completely block Akainu's punch with relative ease, similar to Whitebeard, and we see Ben Beckman, his 1st commander equivalent, threatening Kizaru with a gun, which actually does get Kizaru to stop. The indication from these two cases would be that the combatants involved are somewhat equal in strength. That is of course obvious for Shanks considering his earlier portrayal of Whitebeard, and it makes sense for Ben Beckman as well, otherwise I really don't know why Kizaru would have stopped. Now, what can we derive from all of this? Whitebeard was once an equal to Gold D. Roger, so he was probably stronger than any of the current Yonko in his prime, but now he's old. So exactly how strong is he? Is he even still at Yonko level? From his earlier encounter with Shanks, we can see that at the very least, Whitebeard is able to output power on the same level as other Yonko. However, throughout Marineford it becomes rather obvious that while his power output may still be the same, his endurance, speed, and haki are not. His failure to stop Squartle's attack from hitting him and the countless times in which his body took his attention away from the battle makes it all too obvious that Whitebeard is suffering in ways that the other Yonko wouldn't, which is why Akainu comes away from the fight with such little damage by comparison. Does this mean that Akainu is on Yonko level though? Maybe. Akainu wanted to protect Marineford from being destroyed, which means that he couldn't go all out either, because his magma would destroy Marineford almost as well as Whitebeard's earthquakes. And we know from later that he can change the environment of an island when he's going all out, so that supports this idea that he wasn't going all out here. I think that it would be fair to put Akainu on the level of the Yonko because of all of this. Kizaru throughout the entire Marineford saga has constantly been put up against vice captains / 1st commanders. So I think that where he lies is fairly obvious, and that is the upper echelon of 1st commander strength, if there is such a thing. Aokiji is a bit more difficult. He was the only admiral to actually defeat his opponent, but his opponent was the 3rd commander and he ties in a clash with the 2nd commander. I personally would say that this means that he is on that 2nd commander level, and I think the fact that he was the only admiral of the 3 to not injure Whitebeard supports that placement. In regard to his later portrayal at Punk Hazard, I made a video laying out my thoughts that you should check out. I'll put a link to it at the end of this video. This perspective of the Admirals varying in strength can be further supported when we look at Doflamingo and his actions. Skipping ahead 2 years, we come to an encounter between Doflamingo and Aokiji, in which Aokiji is passively threatening Doflamingo to get away from Smoker. Dofi challenges Aokiji a bit by attempting to deal Smoker a final strike, but ends up being frozen by Aokiji before he can do so. However, we see Doflamingo effortlessly break out of the ice and proceed to leave the island after stating that he has no desire to fight Aokiji. This encounter doesn't portray much in terms of a matchup between the two and how it would turn out. However, it does give us Doflamingo's perspective on the matter. His willingness to test Aokiji by attacking Smoker and his statement would indicate that he isn't terrified of the idea of fighting Aokiji. This notion is reinforced by the scene in which he demands to know where Aokiji's intentions lie. The way he talks to him here, it isn't the way in which you would address someone you know can defeat you in a fight. So at the very least, in Doflamingo's mind, Aokiji isn't someone that he stands no chance of defeating. Tying directly in with the previous point, we move to Fujitora and Doflamingo inside his palace. Fujitora tells Doflamingo of his intentions to destroy the 7 Warlord system, and in retaliation Doflamingo attacks him, in which Fujitora blocks it, rather casually too, as he just continued talking, seemingly unbothered. Doflamingo then threatens to get rid of him, which is what I want to focus on. Whether he could defeat Fujitora or not is irrelevant here, what matters is that he thinks he might be able to. Doflamingo knows how strong the Admirals are. He saw them fight at Marineford, a case he didn't know prior to that, but the title alone does not indicate to him that they're stronger than he is. Throughout Dressrosa, Doflamingo admits that Kaido would kill him, and unlike the Admirals, the Yonkos are all rivals portrayed as being equals in terms of strength and influence, with nothing contradicting that. My point being that if Doflamingo thinks that Kaido would definitely defeat him, that means that he thinks a Yonko in general would definitely defeat him. So by alluding to the idea of him killing Fujitora, he's confirming the notion that not all Admirals are of Yonko level strength. Which means that if Akainu is considered to have Yonko level strength, then the Admirals vary in strength to some degree. Now, I don't think that Doflamingo would have actually been able to defeat Aokiji or Fujitora, but I do think that he's justified in thinking that he stands a chance at beating one, and I think that the narrative supports this as well. During Marineford, he was able to stop Jozu dead in his tracks. He was never shown to injure him or anything, so there really isn't much we could get from this scene in terms of how a matchup would go, but it does indicate that Dofi could probably give him a good fight. After defeating Doflamingo, Luffy and Law get their bounties increased to 500 million berries apiece. Following that soon after, Jack is introduced, Kaido's third commander equivalent. His bounty upon introduction is the highest bounty thus far and is a staggering 1 billion berries. The exact same as the combined bounty of Luffy and Law, meaning that the world government viewed Jack as an equivalent threat to the duo that took down Doflamingo. The indication here being that Jack is stronger than Doflamingo. This notion is reinforced by Kaido himself. At the end of Zou, Kaido says that Doflamingo is too weak, and if we fast forward to Act 3 of Wano, when Jack loses to Inugarashi and Nekomamushi, Kaido says that it isn't because Jack is weak, just that they are that strong. These two scenes together show that from Kaido's point of view, Doflamingo is weaker than Jack. So then, let's place Doflamingo right below 3rd Commander level, which doesn't contradict his interaction with Jozu either. Further evidence supporting this can be found during Whole Cake Island when Luffy fights Cracker, Big Mom's 3rd Commander equivalent. Gale 4 completely overwhelmed Doflamingo in speed and power, but Doflamingo was still able to put up a good fight against Luffy even though his internal organs had previously been messed up by Law. Cracker was not so overwhelmed, and wouldn't have lost to Luffy if not for Nami's interference. My point here being that Doflamingo vs Luffy with each at their best is a debate, but Cracker vs Luffy isn't. Also, unlike Dofi, Cracker was shown actually being able to injure Luffy in Gale 4. Now it is possible that Doflamingo could have been able to perform better against Cracker given their devil fruits, but that's only if his strength can cut through the biscuit soldiers, which is debatable, because at the very least when Cracker is inside of the soldier, it can use Haki. And Doflamingo hasn't had the best showing in terms of cutting / piercing through Haki with his strings. The only time that it was shown, he immediately questioned Luffy's statement about getting his Haki back, indicating that Dofi isn't confident that his strings could pierce through Luffy's Haki. Moving on though, I think that nonetheless it would be fair to say that Cracker is portrayed as being a slight notch above Doflamingo in combat, reinforcing that Doflamingo is right below 3rd Commander level. And considering that Jozu fought an Admiral, that Admiral being Aokiji, and that he lost due to him not paying attention, is not insane for Dofi to think he may be capable of beating an Admiral as well, although I would probably disagree with him. Anyways, to sum this all up, my current thoughts on how strong the Admirals are is that I think they vary from Yonko to 2nd Commander level. Now it is possible that Akainu has gotten even stronger and is now someone who could fight on Pirate King level, but that isn't currently supported. As for the order of the current Admirals from weakest to strongest, I will be revealing that in an upcoming video about how strong a Pirate King's crew is. As for my next video, that will be on the topic of advanced armament Haki and how it works. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'd hope you consider liking and subscribing. See ya!